still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. This is, what is it? It's bright and early, 6 o'clock, and we really appreciate you guys being with us. We got a great show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking once again to the Patriots of X746, Mr. Tim Loggins, and we've got some more celebrating to do because the competing resolution or the companion resolution that goes along with the House. So State Representative Brant Smith, you might remember, passed House Resolution 1013, which clarified gun rights. It cited a circuit court decision by a judge, Taft versus the state of Arkansas, where they essentially found that what we've been saying for 5 years, which is possession of a firearm, has been decriminalized here in the state of Arkansas, which means that you don't need a permit or a permission slip from the government to carry your weapon concealed or open in the state of Arkansas. That resolution passed the House of Representatives. Now, resolutions are non-binding, but it's just a vote saying, listen, this is what the law says, and we agree with the circuit judge in his decision, in that case, Taft versus the state of Arkansas. The companion resolution, which is being run by Senator Scott Flippo. Matter of fact, I'll give you the bill number on that. It's Senate Resolution 18. So SR 18 by Senator Scott Flippo to clarify gun rights. It's the exact same resolution. It's being run on the Senate end, and it cleared the Senate Committee on City, County, and Local Affairs. It cleared that committee yesterday on a voice vote. And will now go before the full Senate. Very exciting stuff here because it's just good to see the state legislature actually admit, and this has been done through a lot of outreach, through a lot of educational efforts and that sort of thing. It's also been done. It's also been made possible by the sheer fact that this law, Act 746, that decriminalized possession of a weapon here in the state of Arkansas, was passed back in 2013. It went into effect July of 2013. There have been prosecutors all over the state that have had to drop charges from officers who weren't made aware of these massive changes that took place back in 2013. There have been court cases that have where the defendant has been found not guilty because the judge is reading the law as is. And then, of course, you have the circuit court decision, which is really something special here because essentially it wasn't, if you'll remember it, it wasn't specifically a gun case. It had to do with somebody acting suspicious or acting strange. And there was somebody spotted a gun in his waist belt. Then he left the scene, and the officer stopped him specifically because of the weapon suspicion. And the judge threw the case out, found the guy not guilty, because even though I think he was on drugs. But and here's the thing: the law is what the law is, and this was such a victory in terms of admitting what's on the books, and what is on the books is essentially decriminalized. And I've said this a million times: there is no law out there that says that you are allowed to sit on your front porch and drink sweet tea. But there's no law preventing you from doing that. And that is the status right now of Arkansas gun laws. Anyway, we'll be talking with Tim Loggins. I say all that to say this. We'll be talking with Tim Loggins about that passing out of the Senate committee, as well as other issues that are coming up. I understand State Representative Richard Womack has a really, really good bill that's going to be coming up that has to do with gun rights. I'm going to ask him about that. Also, we want to get an update on the Stand Your Ground legislation as well, and we'll talk about that again coming up here at 6:33. Then at 7:33, Mr. Josh Waters will be back on the program. If you haven't seen the scorecard yet, it's up right now at conduitnews.com for week number 7 of our continuing coverage of the 92nd General Assembly, week 7. The bills that made the scorecard over the last couple of weeks, as well as the new bills to watch section. And there's more. This is the first week, I think, that there's more on the opposed section than there is under the support section. And let me give you another. Let me give you this right here, because this is pretty interesting. From conduitnews.com, Arkansas legislators move to add additional legislative session. A resolution filed in the Arkansas Senate would change the state constitution to allow for annual legislative sessions rather than every other year. The proposed constitutional amendment would provide for an annual regular legislative session for no more than 60 days. Currently, the legislature meets every other year for a regular legislative session. In addition, the proposed amendment would also allow the legislature to call special sessions. Currently, only the governor can call a special session, and they are limited to items that he lists on the agenda. Notably, the proposed amendment would also get rid of the 30-day fiscal sessions held in even number years. This constitutional amendment would grow government by having legislators in Little Rock for twice as long, thereby increasing per diem and mileage costs. It would also it would provide twice the opportunities for new laws that could increase the size and scope of government here in Arkansas. The resolutions filed by State Senator Trent Gardner, Republican from El Dorado. Now, so here's the thing on this. What's funny is I got a text message. About this. And somebody said, I would be for doing this if only for the fact that they would have to answer to the voters sooner. Because, see, right now, it's an odd-numbered year. It's 2019. It's an odd-numbered year. And on odd-numbered years, they have these legislative sessions where they can pursue policies, they can grow government, they can raise taxes to pay for roads, right? They can refuse to allow a tax to sunset and instead send it back to you to vote again. You know what I'm saying? They can do all this stuff that I think is very unpopular with the voters that sent them there. That's just my hypothesis, right? Well, we have a very bad long-term memory. Voters in general, constituents in general, we don't have a very good long-term memory. Most of us will forget about the tax increases that they just passed this week. We'll forget about that. And we don't get to go vote in November, which is still a long time away. We don't get to vote until next November. So you understand what I'm saying here? Somebody was texting me saying the only positive thing about having legislative sessions in both an odd and even year, so on those even years, we would have a say closer to them making these decisions that a lot of us disagree with. Now, I guess you could say, well, they'll be very careful on those even number years. And that's a true statement. They certainly would. Folks, the telephone number, if you want to text me this morning, is 870-275-9799. I'd love to hear from you. That's 870-275-9799. We have a situation on the border that's gotten worse, obviously. You're inundated with mainstream news outlets that are telling you that it's not a crisis at the border. It's not an emergency at the border. Now, one of the reasons the mainstream media, the obvious reason the mainstream media wants to continue to actively deceive you and lie to you is because they don't like the president. They have a personal disagreement with him, and they don't want him to succeed in any way, shape, or form. They certainly don't want him to secure the border. As many of them honestly believe that the president is a racist, a New York real estate billionaire. They actually think he's a racist. Many people actively believe that it is immoral to put up a wall. They believe in open borders, and that's true. But the other reason the mainstream media is continuing to actively deceive the American people about the situation on the border is because it would expose them, if you got into any detail about what's really going on down there, it would expose them as having lied to you for decades on this issue. You have been lied to for decades. People say, well, why was it an emergency last year? Why wasn't it's been an emergency on the southern border for decades. This is not something, I mean, it's gotten worse. The fentanyl's gotten worse. The drugs have gotten worse. Illegal immigration waxes and wanes in terms of the amount of people that we actually catch or we actually know. You know, how this is what I don't understand. How would you logically even trust the statistics? Because they're all border apprehensions this year are down. Border apprehensions are down. Are we? It's like we're not operating in a static environment here. It's a 2,000-mile long border. We don't know what we don't know. You know what I mean? And so the mainstream media, they pair it to, well, border crossings were actually down, and well, that just could mean there's way more people that are coming across and we're not apprehending them. You know, we could be missing things. They could, you know, it's they're thinking too strategically about how to get what they want, which is to come into the country illegally. And so these statistics are phony, but the mainstream media is parroting these, actively deceiving the people that are listening to them. And I really feel bad for them at this time. And we have a media that is worse than it would make anyone uncomfortable if you really got down to that they have a blockade right now on the truth. That the truth is bad for the mainstream media. It's bad for their business. So there's also a financial incentive involved when we talk about clicks and controversy and things like that. But the illegal immigration issue is a big deal. It is a crisis down there. And what's funny is, according to Breitbart News, President Trump projected to oversee the largest flow of illegal immigration as the United States-Mexico border or down there since former President Bush's administration. Again, I'm just going to say here, how do we even really know this, you know? Because you don't know what you don't know. It's the same thing when they say, well, President Trump is, he's just not very smart, and he should know about this fentanyl, that 90% of all the fentanyl is found and confiscated at ports of entry, and he's trying to secure the border, blah, blah, blah. Wait a second. Think about what you just said. Again, we don't know what we don't know. So while 90% is apprehended at ports of entry, with people who are actually trying to smuggle this stuff across, in a truck or something on a paved road. What about the rest of the 2,000-mile long border of people that are getting through with their fentanyl, with their backpacks full of fentanyl? Like, does that ever cross anyone's mind? You throw these statistics around because they prove your argument, but they don't really, if you take any sort of critical approach in your thinking, you would realize that that's not the case. Again, the telephone number 870-275-9799. So I get this text last night from State Representative Dan Douglas. Or I'm sorry, not from State Representative Dan Douglas. I'm sorry. I get a text last night about State Representative Dan Douglas. And hang on a second. What happened? Did I just get a text message here? Yeah. Okay. So I get this. I get a text message, and I'm trying to find the bill. And it had something to do with. Let me just read you this text. Dan Douglas files bill to extend in-state tuition to currently ineligible immigrant students. And I found that interesting in light of everything that's going on. Now I haven't read the bill, so I don't know if that's I don't know if we're talking about legal immigrants. I don't know if we're talking about illegal immigrants. It just says immigrant students. And I just want to highlight the fact State Representative Dan Douglas, man, he has been fascinating from the standpoint of a Republican to watch this session. He's spoken against anti-abortion resolution that would have made abortion in Arkansas illegal with the exception of the life of the mother if Roe versus Wade is overturned. Then he filed as a Republican an assisted suicide bill which is I saw an email earlier in the week from the Family Council about that, saying this is a terrible idea. Well, yeah, it is. And if you're pro-life and you believe that life begins and needs to be protected from conception to natural death, those are two big no-nos on an issue that is supposed to be very low-hanging fruit for Republicans. I mean, it's something that really is one of the few times that has united Republicans across this state, is the pro-life issue, because we can agree on the basic humanity and we can agree on the value of human life, and that's fascinating to me. And then, of course, Dan Douglas has differed on that in two separate instances. That's been fascinating to me. What else do we have here? I did see this. Open records legislation has been rejected. I'll talk about that here in a minute. That was a bill by Kim Hammer that made the Conduit scorecard. But this right here is fascinating. Where Senator Ron Caldwell, it's reported in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette this morning by Michael Wickline that Senator Ron Caldwell is skeptical of the governor's consultant. They were paid, $900,000 in an effort to rework the agencies. It's part of this reorganization effort. In committee yesterday, Senator Ron Caldwell threw out the idea that we've wasted $900,000 on this consultant. I'll tell you more about that story when we come back. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. Back in a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, we've been talking a lot about how we are going to fund our roads. We've been talking about it, but there's probably been people talking even more about it down at the Capitol, the 92nd General Assembly. A lot of people have been working hard on this. It's unfortunate that it seems to be that the predominant plan is going to go forward and raise our taxes at the wholesale level with gas and diesel, which would mean more money coming out of our pockets. There is, however, a plan that was filed, and a lot of people are taking a look at it now. It's House Bill 1541. It is by State Representative Julie Mayberry, a Republican from Hensley. She joins us on the line now. State Representative Mayberry, thanks for coming on this morning.
Hey, thank you for having me and helping me get this information out to people, because I think most people think this is the only plan.
In Arkansas,
I think overall we are all in agreement
there's a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
a few of your Facebook comments. Janet, for my own sanity, I'm probably going to go off the political grid pretty soon. A lot of people think that. And a lot of our last parody, I would encourage you not to do that. But hey, some of that parody, the needy politician parody, how to grow government in this political climate. They figured that out. I don't think they're losing any sleep. How do you grow government in a state that has voted for less government by electing Republicans? I mean, excuse me for being jaded, but apparently you just wait people out. You just wait for some of those freshmen to stay in there 3 terms, and then they'll start doing it. That's the way I feel about it. But hey, I'm just sitting here behind a microphone at 6:25 in the morning. Donald on Facebook, the legislature are like teenage boys with a lawn service. They mow all the yards while you can, regardless of the job you do. You just mow. That's pretty funny. I like that. All right, we'll be talking to Mr. Tim Loggins here in just a little bit. Let's get back to this story here. I found this interesting. Anytime we have a rare spark of legislative oversight of the executive branch here in Arkansas, Michael Wickline writing that Senator Caldwell on Tuesday questioned whether the state benefited from spending $900,000 on a consultant. We spent this $900,000 on a consultant to help the governor come up with an idea to reorganize state government. He wants to take it from 42 to 15 agencies, 42 department heads, 15 secretaries that answer directly to the governor. That's his plan. And they're also worried that these cabinet secretaries are going to have too much power. That's also part of this. Somebody speaking up who's a part of the Independent Insurance Agents of Arkansas. Hutchinson countered that the consultant's work, according to Wickline here, was beneficial and that his administration's proposal would allow his cabinet secretaries to create efficiencies in state government. Caldwell, though, is chairman. Senator Caldwell, chairman of the State Agencies and Governmental Affairs Committee. During the Senate Committee's review of House Bill 1360, which would create a cabinet-level Department of Finance and Administration, Caldwell said the committee received its copy of the report by the consulting firm Price Waterhouse Cooper last week. Quote, was that when the report was officially finished? Senator Caldwell asks. Hutchinson's chief transformation officer, Amy Fetcher, replied, yes, we got the final report last week. Caldwell said February 26th. So they got the report finished February 26th. Y'all have been working 15 months, he said. It seems that we threw away $900,000. Caldwell asked why nobody seemed to, quote, wait on the report to come back and see what it was. But Fetcher said a lot of discussions with the consultant and the advisory board have been had throughout the whole process. Quote, the final report wasn't the first time we were in discussion, the consultant said. We worked with PwC throughout the process. They were involved in providing advice as this was formulated. And then afterwards, Hutchinson said the contributions from PwC have been very significant throughout our work on transformation. Let's see here. Then, some point in the committee, Lynn Zeno, executive vice president of the Independent Insurance Agents of Arkansas, told the Senate committee, quote, there is a threat, as the chairman mentioned, about the authority of the secretary. We would like to echo Senator Caldwell's concerns. We've talked to the governor's office at length. They said, well, that's not the intent, that he has unfettered power over all the agencies, but that's what the legislation is. Quote, your department heads, they're not going to come forward and challenge the governor. There are a lot of fellow association folks. They're not going to come forward and challenge the governor. So I am sort of chosen as the one to fall on the sword, Zeno said. Back in just a moment. Representative Mayberry. Thanks for coming on this morning.
Hey, thank you for having me and helping me get this information out to people, because I think most people think this is the only plan. I think overall we are all in agreement that we have kicked this can down the road so many times, session after session. This is not new conversation that we need highway funding, but now the can is in a pothole and we need to do something, and we have to come out with a plan. I just don't agree with the plan that's being presented. I want to be for something, not against something.
Right.
And so I always believe if you want to complain about something, at least give an alternative, give another idea. And so that's why I filed House Bill 1541. I actually have two other bills that would kind of help as well, but 1541 is probably the more concise, long-term plan. And I wish I could tell you it was my idea. It's not. It's an idea that was presented in 2013. It was a blue ribbon committee that put the main bill together. Former State Representative Jonathan Barnett, who is also the Republican Party committee man, presented the bill and could not get it out of the Transportation Committee back in 2013. And it's a good bill, and it needs to be talked about again. And that's all I'm trying to do is say, hey, this was very well vetted. It had 67 House sponsors. It's a great idea. Let's look at this idea again.
And, I was talking to a legislator yesterday who supports the governor's plan. And he said that he loves the idea of taking everything that's used for driving or road purposes, from the sales and use tax of revenue like your bill does, for new and used vehicles, trailers, semi-trailers. All of this should be directed toward road use. I think most people think that is common sense, and but it doesn't appear that that's something that the leadership is ready to do right now. Let me ask you this, State Representative Julie Mayberry. Is the main reason you've put out this plan that doesn't raise taxes, is it because you don't like the fact that the other plan does raise taxes? Oh,
absolutely. If there was another plan that didn't raise taxes, I'd be all over it. We need highway funding, but I think we need to look within. When I need money around my house, I look at where I can save money. What can I do without? Can I get rid of Netflix? Can I get rid of my phone? Can I get rid of, let's see what we can do within. And I think that that's what we need to do with our current government. What money do we currently have, and how should we be directing that money? And that's what this plan does. Over a period of 10 years, we would gradually transfer money from the sale of the new and used vehicles over to the highway fund. So there would not be any major hit in any one year. It would be 10% one year, 20% the next year, 30% all the way up. I do not have a fiscal impact yet.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're broadcasting live. I'm watching the sunrise here. I'm on the 7th floor of the Plaza West building here at the studios of the Answer 101.1 FM. And really glad that they would have us here, as always, and host us, give us a space. And we also are really glad that they carried this program. And we're grateful for all the affiliates out there. Folks, hey, welcome back to the program. This is Mr. Tim Loggins. You know who he is with the Patriots of Act 746. Tim, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Paul. Good morning.
So, Tim, the Patriots of Act 746, we've talked about this, on a mission to educate the people of Arkansas on their gun rights. Arkansas is a constitutional carry state. You can carry a weapon open or concealed without a permit. Tim, big victory yesterday out of the Senate committee where a companion resolution to State Representative Brant Smith's resolution in the House was run in the Senate by Senator Scott Flippo. What can you tell us about what happened? I know you were in the room.
I was so pleasantly surprised yesterday, Paul. Senator Flippo called me to the table. He introduced the resolution. They asked me to introduce myself. I told them all good morning and appreciate this. And there was not a single question, not a single comment. There was a motion to pass, and it passed. I mean, the whole process was 2 minutes. So refreshing. There was no opposition. We got a couple of no votes from the Democrats, but there was no opposition. They understand what what the law is in Arkansas, and it's passed right through.
And when will it be on the Senate floor, you think?
Could be as early as tomorrow. Could be.
Wow. I mean, this is a long time coming. This is essentially what the Patriots have been saying for 5 years now.
Paul, it's victory. You know, it's vindication. It's Christmas in March. You know, it's a lot of hard work went into this, and we're finally seeing some tangible results from it.
That's great. That's great. And I'm excited. I'm really excited for it to get to the Senate. I think, and I want to say this here, because this is a big transition. It's a shame that it's taken since 2013 to get to this point. But I want to just say, you know, in terms of this idea of concealed carry and everything else, and a concealed carry permit being needed or not being needed, there are still some who might say, you know what, I still want this license for reciprocity. And the reason I'm bringing this up, Tim, is just because I don't understand why the Arkansas State Police, as a public service, wouldn't start advertising or changing their messaging to that. Admitting what the law is, admitting you don't need a permit, but saying, but hey, if you want one, there's still a place for it, because if you want to go to Mississippi or Florida or wherever and don't want to necessarily be harassed, want to have that confidence, you know, in case something does happen, that you're going to be okay. To me, that's now where I think the Arkansas State Police should step in, and that's the service they should be providing.
Well, that's absolutely what they should be doing. It's not what they are doing, so reality's not meshing there. And you know what? It really doesn't matter what they do at this point. We're seeing this movement across the country. We're up to like 16 states now that are constitutional carry. Got a possible of 4 or 5 more that in the next month to be constitutional carry. So we could be up to 21, 22 states.
Wow.
You know, within the next couple of months. And that's how we win. That's how we counteract the federal government's overreach into our gun rights, one state at a time. And the permit's going to become irrelevant if we continue in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Tell me about State Representative Richard Womack. He has a bill, and it would do what?
I can't say enough good things about Representative Womack. He's ran the bill. He's filed the bill HB 1694. Basically, what that does, Paul, is it eliminates gun-free zones in Arkansas. Between him and Jimmy Gazaway, Representative Gazaway is running on to eliminate 573-127. Between the two of them, we're going to have, basically prisons, jails, courtrooms, and collegiate sporting events will be the places that you can't carry a weapon. Other than that, you'll have a right to defend yourself wherever you're at. I cannot thank him enough for filing this bill, and we're having the right conversation with it. Just help move.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it needs to be. I mean, what I would love also. I mean, if we're clarifying gun rights, I would also like to clarify these mass shootings are happening in gun-free zones. That's a fact.
That's a fact. It's irrefutable. 98+% of mass shootings of 4 or more people occurs where normal citizens aren't allowed to carry a weapon. And HB 1694 is going to eliminate 98% of those areas that you can't carry a weapon. So. I encourage the listeners, look at 1694, contact your legislator, ask them to support it. This is a good bill. This will be a good law.
Yeah. Hey, so Tim, let me ask you this. Can we get an update on the Aaron? It is Aaron Pilkington's bill on the Stand Your Ground. And, just give us an update on where we are on that.
Well, at this point, Paul, I think it's incorrect to call it Representative Pilkington's bill. We received word yesterday that Senator Bob Ballinger had gotten involved in it, along with the NRA. And Senator Ballinger has now supposed to run today a bill on Stand Your Ground, and basically has kidnapped this process. And I want to announce to the listeners that places like 746 are no longer supporting 1059. And Paul, the only way I can judge the future is what's happened in the past. I remember, you talked earlier in the show about short memories. I remember last session when a simple campus carry bill got hijacked into an enhanced carry, which is a total mess. And Senator Ballinger was right in the middle of that, and so was the NRA. And 1059 has been amended twice already. I'm hearing that there may be a couple more amendments coming from the NRA, which is kind of neat because they haven't been involved at all in this process until yesterday. And I just don't trust the process at this point. I notified Representative Pilkington that we were withdrawing support. And I'm not saying we're in opposition at this point, but I can't support it and be involved in it simply because I don't trust the process.
Interesting. So you're saying, and listen, I know that reputation, something that you work to build, and in terms of the reputation right now of the Patriots of Act 746, I mean, you guys have 17,000 active people who are, who really care about their liberty and their gun rights. And so you're saying now that this is not necessarily a bad piece of legislation. I mean, originally this was Aaron Pilkington, his bill, and Gary Stubblefield was going to help him in the Senate. And now it's Bob Ballinger. And you mentioned the NRA because out of the blue, I get this notification last night. And the NRA is now telling everybody their legislative lobbying arm is now telling everybody that there's this big vote on a gun bill in committee, and it mentions Senator Bob Ballinger in the article. And I thought to myself, the NRA hasn't been anywhere working on this particular piece of legislation until right now, at least publicly. And so what you're saying is that the Patriots are saying, look, the last time 2 years ago, Senator Ballinger, who was Representative Ballinger at the time, was involved, along with the same NRA guys. We ended up getting a bill that was based on political calculations and not based on what, Tim?
Well, Representative Pilkington filed a good bill. It removed
So say that again. You're breaking up a little bit. So Representative Pilkington filed a good bill originally, you're saying?
Originally, it was a good bill. It removed the duty to retreat. It was a good bill. And what we're looking at now is we don't know what the bill's going to say. With Senator Ballinger being involved and the NRA being involved, we saw what they did to enhance carry, to Charlie Collins' campus carry bill. They made it something that was unrecognizable, unwieldy. They're still violating the law on enhanced carry. There's so many conflicts and contradictions. Patriots is not going to be associated with a bad bill. I would rather have what we have now, which is not bad, as opposed to making it worse. And I'm afraid that it's going to make it worse with these people being involved in it, especially the way they're doing it. I'm hearing that they might run as early as today. That's violating the normal order. I'm leery of it. I don't trust the process. We don't trust the process, and so we no longer support it. I hope it's a good bill at the end of the day, and I encourage all the legislators to carefully look at what's being run and vote your conscience on it. If you feel it's a good bill, vote yes. If you feel it's a bad bill, vote no. We don't oppose it. We don't support it. It's that simple.
Well, I mean, I can completely understand that. I mean, if you go back 2 years, Tim, to the enhanced carry situation, in the press conference, the whole idea of an extra red tape and an extra license was credited to Bob Ballinger in the press conference. The governor said it himself. You can go back and listen to the tape. And of course, the enhanced carry has been a disaster for the state.
So if you remember, Paul, Charlie Collins started campus carry to allow professors to carry on college campuses. That wound up being a convoluted mess that was pulled out of committee twice, violated normal regular order twice. They had an amendment waiting as soon as it passed to undo everything that the original bill did. Mm-hmm. And how do we know this time that they don't have amendments waiting, shell bills waiting to change it as soon as it's passed? And I can only judge the future by the past, and I don't trust this process. And the NRA has not been involved in any legislation. They've not contacted us. They've not been to the Capitol on the resolutions. They're not involved in Representative Womack's removing gun-free zones. They're not involved with Representative Gazaway. And now all of a sudden, they weighed in, on this stand your ground bill. And I'm just leery of the whole process.
Did the NRA, you think, 2 years ago, did their reputation take a hit around people? Liz, I know people. They may love the NRA. They may specifically appreciate what the NRA does on a national level. But in terms of people who are following state politics, do you think that their reputation kind of took a hit with those who are really carefully watching what happens with their gun rights here in Arkansas?
Well, if it didn't, it should have, Paul, because they were backing Charlie Collins' campus carry bill. They were backing Senator Linda Collins Smith campus carry bill. They promised to support it. They went behind closed doors with the governor, and bam, we've got enhanced carry. They sold out conservative legislators on enhanced carry, and what's going to stop them from doing it this time on the stand your ground bill? I just don't trust it. I feel this is an attempt by them to become relevant again after losing credibility. And if they pass a good bill, great. I'm all for that. I just don't trust if they can.
Okay, so it could still be the stand your ground bill. This is news. It could still be good, but because of what's happened in the past, the Patriots VAC 746 you can't. You guys just don't have any expectation for being able to ensure the people who trust you guys of what the outcome would be in the legislative process. That's fair.
That is more than fair. And Paul, I contacted Representative Cookin and told him this, and he said he more than understands. So he knew exactly what I was talking about. I've reached out to a few legislators, and that we were talking to about this, that we were trying to generate a consensus on it, and we told them what had happened, and they were like immediately saying, "Oh wow, I did not know that." Okay, so people in the legislature, they remember what happened 2 years ago. And now you've got everybody saying, wow, what's going to be the final outcome, the final result? And you know what? I'm sorry that it came to this, but we are withdrawing our support.
Hey, tell me about Gun Owners of America. What do you think of that organization?
Gun Owners is the only no-compromise organization in the United States. I anticipate them getting involved with Representative Womack's gun-free zone elimination bill. They're no compromise. They stand up for our right to keep and bear arms, period. And that's really where we're at. Locally, we've got to stand up for our right to keep and bear arms, period. We've compromised everything we can compromise.
Wow. So let me ask you this on Representative Womack's bill. Is there any pushback into trying to eliminate some of these gun-free zones?
Paul, there's always going to be pushback because we have a certain, subset of the population that believes guns are bad. They want to remove all guns, period. That's their real agenda. And I'm talking about progressives and Democrats. They want to remove our ability to keep and bear arms. So is the pushback? Yes. And you have legislators in districts that may have a high proportion of moderate or progressive voters, and they could be concerned about it. But I'm going to, just tell your viewers, contact your legislator and say, hey, we support eliminating these killing zones. And that's what gun-free zones are, the killing zone. Folks should have a right to carry a weapon wherever they're at. That's really the premise. And so, yeah, there's some pushback, but I believe that, good conservative legislators will understand what this bill does and they'll support it.
Wow. Well, Tim, I really appreciate you being on, sir. As always, it's always great to have you on. Great to talk to you. And congratulations on all the hard work, all of the meetings you've had. Not you. I'm talking about, you're heading up that Northeast Arkansas chapter, but, there's chapters across the state of Arkansas that have done a really good job reaching out to legislators, having having a relationship, saying, hey, listen, let me show you what the law says. And that's what's led to these two amazing resolutions that are really agreeing with a circuit court decision the concept, Tim, and I know you know this, I'll give you the last word, the concept of constitutional carry, the idea that in Arkansas you can carry a gun, open or concealed, without a permission slip from the government, is a giant transfer of power from the government back to the people. And it's just it's a time to celebrate, my friend.
Paul, it took us 100 years plus to give away our gun rights. And you think about it, in just 5 short years, we're restoring liberty to the people of Arkansas. And we got 9 chapters around the state now. We've got 17,000 members. We're engaged. We're up off the couch. And this is what freedom looks like. This is how you make a difference.
Tim Loggins, we appreciate it, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you, Paul.
All righty. And, folks, I want to remind you that the Patriots of X746, you can just go to Facebook. You just type in Patriots of X746, and then it's a closed group, which means that you have to request to become a member. So do that, get that process started, and become part of the online sensation today. And I'm telling you, man, and then you can go to these, you talk about 9 chapters across the state. You could attend a meeting if that's something you wanted to do. You're going to be able to get information. You're going to be able to start conversations with your friends, start conversations with your local law enforcement or local politicians or your county judge or whatever, and say, there's still people that may not quite know what happened in 2013. The phone number, if you want to text me, is 870-275-9799. Coming up at the bottom of the next hour, we're going to talk to Mr. Josh Waters about the Week 7 Conduit scorecard. Coming up at 7:05, have you heard that the governor wants to change the star on the Arkansas flag that stands for the Confederacy? He's agreeing with Democrat Charles Blake, who has a bill that failed last week. And he is now supportive of it, says it's the right thing to do, which I believe means we can firmly put Governor Hutchinson in the social justice warrior category. He's an SJW. We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799.
The DFNA, I'm sure it's taking a little bit of time to get it to me, but I can go back to the 2013 fiscal impact, and in year 1, it's $22 million. By year 10, it was $345 million.
Wow.
And the wonderful thing about that idea is that we meet as a legislature every other year, and if somewhere along the line our economy tanks or we need to make adjustments, we still can. If we pass this half-cent sales tax, it's permanent. It's in our Constitution, and it does not have a sunset clause. And that would be much more difficult to change. This is still fluid, and if we decide that, the economy is not growing at 3%, there are protections in there to make sure that we're not taking away from any our adequacy funding and all the other things that are really important. It only goes into effect if there's 3% growth. And I feel confident in that. We have casino money that's going to...
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Still haven't seen any sort of Medicaid disclosure bill. I mean, if we're going to talk corruption, there's obviously been a lot of corruption. There's a lot of people that are at least admitting that there was a lot of corruption. It's a very embarrassing thing. Ready for that Medicaid disclosure bill. Want to see where that is. If you really want to get serious about undoing what happened, then politicians, legislators who receive money for Medicaid should have to disclose it. They should just have to tell us if they're a consultant all of a sudden, They should have to tell us if they, and we also need to close the attorney loophole. We need to do that too. Just reminding everybody, if we're going to talk about ethics, we're going to talk about trying to clean things up. It's more than just trying to correct a perception of what has happened. It's trying to correct the reality that we have corruption. That's we need to do that, and you got to quit allowing attorneys to represent their clients in secret before the legislature. You cannot. It's illegal. That actually is illegal. You can't be paid to pass a piece of legislation. Taxpayer pays your salary if you're a politician, but you can't take extra money to do something for somebody. That you can't do that. We all agree that you shouldn't be able to do that, too, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, just a reminder. So Senator Kim Hammer, who has he had a great piece of legislation, matter of fact, it was to try to increase the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, to where it would apply to entities that kind of are set up, nonprofit entities that depend on government, wanted to have them wanted to have them subject to the FOIA. Well, yesterday, Senate panel rejected the bill. I don't even think it came up for a vote. I mean, I don't think they voted for it. It would have. Let's see here. The members of the state agency's Governmental Affairs Committee discussed Senate Bill 231. They discussed it for 35 minutes, and then they just let the bill die. So I guess there wasn't a motion made. Transparency advocates said the 52-year-old Arkansas Freedom of Information Act already applies to private entities that do public business, including university athletic foundations in Fayetteville and Jonesboro. But those groups routinely decline Arkansas's open records requests, forcing taxpayers to risk costly legal challenges. Quote, this is not going to eliminate all of the litigation, but it certainly is going to bring clarity, Kim Hammer said. So, Eric Besson, who writes this for the Democrat Gazette, he's clearly onto something when he specifically mentions it would apply to private entities that do public business, including athletic foundations in Fayetteville, the Razorbacks, and Jonesboro, the Red Wolves. And no one makes a motion. They just let the bill die. Wow, I thought the medical society was powerful. You think the medical society is powerful down there in killing scope of practice? Oh no. College athletics. That's a powerful lobby too. Funded by by you. Both.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Coming in. And if that casino money starts coming in, and we just passed some other tax cuts, if the tax cuts do what you expect them to do, our economy should be growing. And back in 2013, I think that there were other things that might have been of concern at that time. We had Obamacare pushed on us and a lot of other issues that were kind of a priority at that time. We've taken care of those things.
Yeah.
This is the time to bring this plan back up.
You know, and you know, you mentioned Obamacare. I mean, when it comes to Arkansas Works, you know, originally at this time, a couple of years ago, I think 4 years ago, that was projected to cost us $50 million. And of course, I think this year it's actually costing us $138 million. And so, you know, that's a lot of money that could go to roads that we have allocated somewhere else. You mentioned Republican National Committeeman Jonathan Barnett. And as a matter of fact, that's interesting because I already had scheduled, after our interviews concluded, I went back and I found the video, State Representative Mayberry, from 2011, where Jonathan Barnett was on the House floor, then State Representative, and he was presenting HJR 1001. And this was the bill that everyone voted on that had a sales tax increase to fund for specific projects with a sunset clause. And he assured, and he can't bind future legislators. No one can. But I just think it's if you go back and listen to it and you get this assurance, this is a temporary tax, it's going to go away. But it's now the plan is to send it back to the voters to make it a permanent tax. And I think that just fuels the skepticism that citizens have when it comes to believing what the government tells them. What do you think about that?
Rightfully so. I think that, no, I was not there. My husband was there in 2013, and he was saying at the time, any time that we hear that a tax is going to sunset, don't believe it, because that usually doesn't happen. People get used to paying it, and they you know, say, oh, well, you're used to paying this. This is not an increase, and blah, blah, blah. Well, most of the time that ends up, you know, happening. I think we need to keep our promise that this ends. Let's let it end. So yes, I'm definitely opposed to that too. I very frustrating up here because it is Republican-led legislature, and these should not be the issues that we're dealing with. These should not be on the table.
Well, and you know, the other side says, if I can play devil's advocate, you know, they say that they've kicked the can down the road as well. Now, I think the can we're kicking is actually we're just not cutting spending. You know, because the revenue is increasing every year to the government. We're just spending it instead of saving it to spend on roads. But they say we've kicked the can down the road to the point where, and I've even had legislators tell me, Julie, that they want to cut spending, but they've tried to have that conversation over the last several years. But there is no movement there. And in the meantime, the roads are degrading to a point where they get even more expensive to fix. If they get bad enough, you can't repair them. You have to redo them. That's what they say. So I guess I understand that argument, but I don't think the answer. I think there's got to be a better answer than taxing the people. I let you respond to that, but I also would like for you to talk a little bit about where this goes from here, because the more popular plan, or let's say the governor's plan, is going to be voted on today in the House, I believe. And if that passes, I wonder if your bill will even be heard in committee.
Well, I first will tell you, I don't believe it's going to be voted on today. It was not on our 2-day calendar and yesterday, so therefore it cannot be voted on today. So it'll probably be moved to Monday. It should have been. It passed on Tuesday. Typically, we would vote on it on Thursday, but it was not on our calendar. So I don't know the reason behind that, but they did not. It's not happening today. So we still have time to contact legislators and voice your opinion and make them think a little bit more about this plan. So I did want to say that. I'm forgetting the other question you asked.
Oh, no, it was just, you know, it was you already answered it. You're not for the tax increases. I'm not for the tax increases. But what they say is we've kicked the can down the road because the roads are so degraded and they're crumbling and they get more expensive. if you let them get bad enough, they get even more expensive. So people are tired. Some people are telling me, they're like, well, it's like triage. You know, I don't want to vote for the tax increase, but at the same time, the highway department, they're saying the roads are getting so bad that they're getting more expensive if you keep not funding them.
Right. And I do agree. That's why we need a plan, because it is more expensive. But that's why House Bill 1541 is a
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Hour number 2. Thank you so much for being with us today. I was just looking at this headline here. Senate votes to send the highway measure to Hutchinson. Of course, we talked about this yesterday. You know, we were kind of at a wake yesterday. Wow, it's a beautiful sunrise where I am. I mean, it's already risen, but you know what I mean. So we voted to send this bill to Governor Hutchinson, and they had 71 votes in the House. This is short of the 75 votes that they would need if they were going to get 3/4. Now, it passed anyway because the Speaker of the House ruled, along with the Rules Committee, that they only needed 51% in order to pass this because they think they have a court precedent on their side. Amendment 19 of the Arkansas Constitution says that if you want to raise or lower an existing tax, you have to have 75% approval from both chambers. If you create a new tax, you only need 51%. So they've just raised your taxes under the premise that taxing gas at the wholesale level is different than taxing gas at the pump. Here's the problem. You ready? Ready for the problem? It's the same product. And you're taxing retailers. In both instances, you're taxing retailers at the wholesale level or retailers at the consumer level, at the pump level, like you're going to the gas pump. They have now taxed the product twice. There are many people that are starting to think you needed 75%. Many people are. But you know what? You guys go ahead. You go ahead. This whole thing, this whole highway plan, this was a manufactured crisis to begin with. It's a manufactured crisis that brought us to this point. 4 years ago, if we would have taken general revenue, then we would have had 4 years of taking general revenue to try to fund our roads. $500 million in budget increases over 4 years. We've taken in $500 million more as a state from the taxpayers. Easily, you could have funded it with this program, but you would have had to stop spending the money elsewhere. That we are in this it's crystal clear. The reason the governor wants to tax you more is because this state lacks discipline in positions of leadership. We do not possess fiscal discipline. And hey, discipline's hard. It is. It is. Personally, discipline is hard. As a government, obviously, it's going to be even harder. But we don't have fiscal discipline in this state. And that is why we are where we are today. Telephone number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. I am not writing these headlines. Let me just say this. I am also not creating this news. The legislators are creating the news. I'm just reporting you the news. So if the news is overtly negative, that is not something that is my doing. And that's why I move on from that topic to immediately talk about the governor again, but just a slightly different story. I got word of this over the weekend, and then, of course, the Gazette wrote about it yesterday, that Asa Hutchinson now supports Democrat Charles Blake's bill that would change the meaning of the star on the Arkansas flag that stands for the government of the Confederacy, just like the other three stars stand for the United States, France, and Spain. Okay? So when you tell people that that blue star stands for the Confederacy, they say, oh, that's interesting. But it makes a lot more sense if you give them the context that the other three stars stand for Spain, France, and the United States. Then it makes sense. You know what I mean? So if we read this here, this all takes place a week after State Representative Charles Blake, a Democrat, goes before the House State Agencies Committee and tries to get his bill passed, and it went down in flames. It failed miserably. It only got 5 yes votes. It needs 11 to get out of committee. On a roll call, there were 8 legislators that voted no. And fundamentally, I have a giant problem with this idea. I think this is, first of all, it's inviting a you talk about a solution in search of a problem. And I know people are going to be like, what do you mean, Paul? What do you mean the Confederacy, slavery, was yeah, no one's saying that it wasn't. No one's saying that it was a bad thing, but it's part of our history. This particular star has been where it is since the 20s. And I know you can go back and look at the historical context. There is no true way to actually understand the exact thought processes going in the minds of the members of the Arkansas General Assembly when they did this. Now, you can talk about, well, the Ku Klux Klan, there might have been some Ku Klux Klan members, or there were some Ku Klux Klan members who were in the state house and everything else. But there could have been people legitimately voting for that star, okay, for that were trying to do it because they had a family member who died in the Civil War that fought for the Confederacy. There's a lot of different. It's very, very hard to try to go back and get into the minds, okay, especially when we're judging it based on this 21st century ethic that could change 100 years from now, okay. And it doesn't solve disagreements. That's my biggest problem with it, is that it doesn't solve disagreements, and it will not end here. Don't you understand? If you are a proponent of getting rid of the star on the Arkansas flag or replacing its meaning from the Confederacy to it means Native American tribes, well, 100 years from now we might want to change it again, right? Because we might be offended. We might be offended. For anything, we might be offended that it stands for the United States. We might be offended that it stands for France. We might be offended that it stands for Spain. It's part of a much bigger issue. It's part of a much bigger issue. Do you want to take down all the statues? Do you want to take down the 10 Commandments from the Supreme Court? You want to do that? Why not? A lot of people that disagree with the 10 Commandments. A lot of people don't believe in God right now. You want to take down those? No. There's probably some Democrats that want to replace the meaning of the star, but they would not want to take down the 10 Commandments because you agree with the 10 Commandments. Okay, all right, I got that. But there are other people that want to edit history. There are a lot of people, they don't want to admit that Western civilization is based on Judeo-Christian ideas. They don't want to admit that the Ten Commandments are every bit as much as a historical list of things and the way they shaped civilizations as much as they are spiritual in establishing the law that we can never measure up to, by the way, on our own. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, how far are we going to go back? People want to edit history. I mean, what's funny is if you know the real history about the Confederacy, the Democrat, that star really stands for Democrats, by the way. That star on the flag stands for the Democrat Party. That's really the truth. We've got to stop this idea of editing. What does it solve? It doesn't solve anything. And here's the thing that Republicans have to understand. You may buy the emotional argument that, hey, we don't need a government symbol that could possibly upset somebody. First of all, most people in Arkansas don't even know what those 4 stars mean. Number one, it's not some giant moral outcry. Most people, aside from legislators, they don't even know what those stars mean. Okay? Now, we can try to create a crisis out of it, and it may actually happen. We don't need to celebrate our scars, right? But we don't need to erase them either. I just got a text message that said that. I'm getting a ton of text messages right now. Just my phone's blowing up. So here's the thing, and I've said this a lot, and I'm upset. I legitimately don't understand why Governor Asa Hutchinson, he did this with Martin Luther King, Robert E. Lee. I don't know why he constantly has to accept the left's narrative that Republicans are racist and then do these contrived things that actually don't solve anything when it comes to race relations. They don't actually end disagreements because the left is not about trying to reconcile things. They're about trying to tear things down. They don't like the star. The people that want to edit history, they want to take down Robert E. Lee statues, they want to take down the star off of the Arkansas flag or rename it or whatever, are the same people that don't like what the American flag stands for. They'd burn that flag. They'd change the meaning of that flag if they could. Don't you understand the mentality of the people you're dealing with? Do not be ignorant. Don't be ignorant of what we are fighting right now culturally in this country. And no, we're not fighting for the Confederacy. No, we're not fighting for slavery. That's preposterous. We're fighting people that don't understand how to reconcile people in our past doing things that are not perfect, doing bad things, doing evil things. We don't know how to reconcile injustice. We can identify injustice, but if you want to know the truth, this is the truth. We have pushed God so far out of public life that we don't know how to reconcile injustice. We are in pursuit of perfection, and we think we can achieve perfection through man-made means. Let's tear down the statue. Have you seen the social justice warriors that tore down one of those Civil War statues in California, and they start to kick the statue like it's alive? This one girl breaks her foot pretty clearly. She does. We are right now in pursuit of perfection because we can, thankfully, it's actually a positive thing. We can recognize the injustices of our past. I don't think we're very good at recognizing the injustices of the now, but we can recognize the injustices of the past, but we have a really difficult time reconciling being in a fallen world, reconciling being in a place where bad things happen, where imperfection exists, and we have people that want to make themselves perfect. It's actually an act of worship. You're going to worship something, right? We were made to worship. You're going to worship something. And people believe, just like the left believes, the Constitution is a living document. You know why they believe that? Because they believe that we are evolving. They believe that somehow mankind is continuing to evolve and that we're not the same people we were. Very much so we are. We're the same people that the Aztecs were, sacrificing children, sacrificing men and women in the high places. We're the same. We're capable of that same kind of barbarism. Okay, we're selling aborted baby parts. We're now talking about keeping children alive and killing them after they're born. Okay, we're still the same person. We're still the same people, right? But we have this goes so much deeper than the Civil War. It's so much deeper than trying to edit history or whitewash the things that we don't like. It's about people who believe that somehow if we sign the right document and if we write the right piece of legislation and we have the process, that somehow we can perfect man, and it's just not spiritually possible. Well, it is possible, but only through Jesus Christ is that possible. And I am sick of this, that we have politicians that are taking and buying this emotional argument as if it's going to end the discussion. You are dealing with people who are very confused, and they're not going to stop at Robert E. Lee and Martin Luther King separating the two holidays. They're not going to stop at renaming the star. They're not going to stop at tearing down Confederate monuments, because the next thing they're going to want to tear down is the statue of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, of all people, by the way. Or just wait. I mean, they'll find something wrong with Abraham Lincoln, you know? Yeah, he's the great emancipator, right? But he really let us down when he got shot. Let's get rid of that monument. Let's get rid of the flag. What is next? Let's get rid of the Jefferson Memorial. Yeah, we don't need that, right? He owned slaves. You see, the truth is that there are people who do things that are immoral. There are people in the past that do things that are immoral. Those same people that do things that are immoral are also capable of doing good things sometimes, by the way. Right? Also capable of doing things. I'll tell you an example that I like to use here. And I know I'm going over time here, but America gets blamed for taking the land of the Indians. We get blamed for giving them smallpox, or just, Western Europeans that ended up becoming Americans. We get blamed for all of this. How could you colonists, you imperialists, you oppressors, right? Because we always got to have a victim and an oppressor in this day and age. Okay. We are using 21st century altruism, and we are placing it on cultures that disagreed. Now, I mean, I want you to think, was there any culture back during the time of first contact with Native Americans, was there any culture on the face of the planet that would have reacted differently if that culture had superior technology and superior weapons and were looking to conquest land? And the answer is no. Any culture that would have come across a primitive civilization, or less primitive, less technologically advanced, I guess, then inevitably you speak different languages. You don't know who these people are. Yeah, that's just what people did back then. You had Native American tribes warring with other Native American tribes. You had Native American tribes that would take slaves. You had this happened in our history. But we here in the 21st century, we're like, can you believe that? And so because that happened, because you had people who did bad things, we want to ignore any of the fruits from their lives being lived, like the fact that I have an iPhone now, which is part of this. If you ever read the book, The 5,000-Year Leap, go read it by Cleon Skousen. We're going to take a break, folks. The headline, if you're just joining us, Governor Hutchinson now supports renaming the star, one of the 4 stars from on the Arkansas flag that right now represents the Confederacy, the history of Arkansas being a member of the Confederate States, and they want to rename it to honor the Native American tribes. So we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute.
Great way to go, because it doesn't hit all at once. It is a gradual 10% one year, 20% next year, and gradually increasing that income. We didn't have income tax cuts all in one year. because that's very hard to do, to impose it all in 1 year. This is a very gradual plan. And again, if we get 5 years down the road and we say, this is not working out, I don't think we can continue at this pace, then you can come up with something else. And that's the beauty of it. Nothing happens too quickly. It's gradually transferring that money based on growth, based on that revenue growth. And then that also kind of controls the spending in some of the other areas. And when you have a budget that you have to stick to, you will find ways to trim it.
That's exactly right.
Just look at your own personal finances. When you don't have that money coming in the door, you will eat out less. You will buy less clothing. You will... you'll make a decision, do we want to take this trip or not?
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
A little bit of notes here on Twitter censoring. Did anybody catch the Joe Rogan podcast where he re-interviewed Jack Dorsey, the Twitter CEO, who admitted we're too aggressive in banning conservatives? And this was after he was taken to task, man. I mean, it was incredible. I don't know if you saw this, but Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey admitted his company was too aggressive in banning conservatives during the Learn to Code controversy. There was I guess, who was it that was with him? Jack Dorsey, the Twitter public relations lady. She was there too, and man, she was just taken to task over and over again. And I saw an article about it. Matter of fact, this is not the right article. There was a better article on this. Hang on one second. It was over at Zero Hedge. Yeah, here it is. Twitter is biased against conservatives. Tim Pool. So they have this guy who's on Twitter. His name's Tim Pool, and he, with facts, just one after the other, really stood up for the truth about what these tech giants and what Tim Pool said to CEO Jack Dorsey on the Joe Rogan Experience yesterday was, if you want to, because they kept trying to excuse the problem, they kept trying to ignore the problem. He said, that's fine. If you want to ignore the problem, you're just inviting government regulation because, and he said this, he says, you have a private entity in the public sphere. And you're doing things, setting things up that the United States government doesn't even see. And again, this makes me very uncomfortable. Regulation, social media, they are inviting the regulation because they are being so ridiculous. And I tell this to everybody. If back during the 50s or 60s, before the internet or long before the internet, when you're driving down the street, if you're driving down the road and there was an ability for somebody to edit what you see, which picket signs you see, which stop signs you see in the public on the sidewalk, you'd say, we don't want anyone to have that power. Well, that's the power that the
whatever it is, you will adjust to that income, but it's certainly easier to adjust when it's done over time than when it's all at one time.
We're talking with State Representative Julie Mayberry, and she's the sponsor of this great bill, HB 1541, attempting to fund our roads without raising taxes. It's as simple as you can get. Now, what she's saying is it's not going to be heard today, and she's right. That means you have time. So it really just comes down to this. This really cruised to the Senate. If you don't want to pay more at the pump, then you need to call your legislator, and you just need to tell them, hey, I would really like for you to maybe look more at HB 1541 and not do the governor's plan, which is going to raise taxes, and the Senate's plan, which is going to raise taxes because we're taxed enough already. And I'm told, State Representative Mayberry, I'm told that it's not on today's calendar because it was amended yesterday to remove State Representative Brant Smith. Okay, so
yes.
That then I guess is that why it's delayed? Because if you amend something, it's got to sit a little longer. Is that right?
It has to sit a little longer. That is part of it. But I didn't know if maybe the plan was to hold it as well anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know the exact details on that. But he did remove his name, so I was very glad to see that. I hear some say, well, it's just a few pennies. What's 3 pennies? Well, let me just ask you this question and ask your listeners this question. If you're driving down the highway, which I'm sure there's people listening driving down the highway right now, you need gas. You pull over, you see one gas station that's $2.10, and across the street you see a gas station that's $2.13. Which gas station do you go to?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly
You go to
right.
the one that's $2.10. And I promise you, you're going to choose. If you don't choose that one, there's something a little odd.
Yep.
But you just proved to yourself that 3 pennies matters, and it continues, to go up. We're right now we have gas prices that are on the lower side. I mean, I wish they were even lower than they are, but remember, our gas prices can go up $3, almost $4. We've experienced that, and I had people telling me, I have to choose whether I go to the grocery store or not, or, go to work. I've got to now carpool. I mean, it really does. It does matter.
Last
3 pennies
question.
Can add up.
Last question. The first part of this plan of the governor's plan are the tax increases, the new tax at the wholesale gas and diesel. The second provision is referring to the people to not let the tax sunset that was passed in 2012 and make it permanent. Do you consider that a new tax?
That's a very interesting question, because there is, I think, some debate on whether it will require.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Text messages 0-275-9799. We're in the middle of our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. Welcome back to the program. We've got Mr. Josh Waters is with us. Josh, how are you, sir? Make it permanent.
Hey, I'm doing okay.
Do you
Paul,
consider that a new tax?
Doing
well. It's great to talk to you again. I know we didn't get to our normal segment yesterday because we had State Representative Julie Mayberry on. Didn't get to our normal segment yesterday on the Conduit scorecard, but let's go ahead and get to it. It's week number 7 of the Conduit scorecard. It's up right now at Conduit News. And, of course, it starts out reviewing some of the other things that were on there last week. But let's start with State Representative Les Warren. He has a bill, HB 1642. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so this bill by Representative Warren would remove the certificate requirement for those who are doing natural hair braiding. So right now, a person has to pay $30 a year, sign an affidavit that they've been practicing for 2 years, an affidavit by an employer or customer who has witnessed them practicing for 2 years. And if you're coming from another state, Paul, you have to take a test, all of that just to get a certificate to perform natural hair braiding in the state. So this bill would just set out that certificate. It just goes line by line in the bill and strikes all that. So it's not one of the more burdensome occupational licenses in the state compared to some others, but nonetheless, it is a removal of a government permission slip that prohibits people from engaging in this profession.
You know, and I love bills like this. Like I said, it doesn't. It might be small, but it's very easy to support because you're like, well, of course, why is this happening to begin with? And so it's good. And by the way, we reached out to State Representative Les Warren to have him on the program, in contact with him. And so hopefully we'll get him on soon to talk a little bit more about this. Just, how did he, come up with this idea and everything. And, I've been doing this for a while now. This isn't the first time that we've tried to allow hair braiders to braid hair, people that just want to work. So seems like there just seems to be more and more regulation for hair braiders over the last couple of years. Let's go to this other bill now, because there's one bill of support. There's 3 bills on the scorecard this week. So bill number 2 is HB 1568, and this is something that is opposed by Conduit. What can you tell us about HB 1568?
So 1568 is basically the House version of a bill we talked about a few weeks ago, Senate Bill 192 by Senator Missy Urban. They tweaked it a little bit, the makeup of this new healthcare council, which will be able to basically lobby legislators with the unified voice of the healthcare industry. And so what this bill would do is it set up this council. It would have members from all these different healthcare professions and those boards of licensing to sit on this council and basically evaluate, provide recommendations to the General Assembly regarding scope of practice changes, licensure changes. And so what you've seen, Paul, especially this session, is it is very, very hard to expand the scope of practice for, say, a nurse practitioner. It's very hard to deregulate almost any profession in the healthcare industry. And what I'm really worried about with this bill, it's going to give a unified, strong lobbying voice, and where they can come to the end of the table and say, well, hey, what's the healthcare council think about this? Well, we oppose this. Well, okay, if 20 different boards of licensing are opposed to it, that's going to make it hard for legislators to vote on it, I think. So I think there's plenty of safeguards right now for the public health and safety. And this really just goes an extra step that is not needed right now.
Yeah, it seems like every 2 years, what we're really seeing is the medical society and these other entities. They're just very annoyed that they always have to try to beat back. Now they claim it's public safety, but in many cases, it's not about public safety. It's about protecting people's money, and which really translates to they don't want more choice and lower costs for consumers. They want to be protectionist. That seems to be the case. And I'm glad you brought up how difficult it is. Now, it has been extremely difficult during these scope of practice weeks to get anything through. And so what you're saying here is this would set up a new council, and the council is tasked with providing evaluation and recommendations. I have heard some legislators, and this is what I really kind of want to get out in front of this if I can. I've heard some legislators say, I'm not a professional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not this or I'm not that. And I'm on this committee and I'm being asked to expand the scope of practice for something that's not necessarily my field. And so there might be some legislators that say, well, because of that, I want this new council formed. But I'm sitting here saying, no, come on. If it's about the public safety, you can interpret data. You can analyze results. That's what people elect you for. They elect you to determine whether or not people can work within their scope of practice. I mean, that's why. And so I think this would be giving up in a lot of ways the constitutional authority that, we give our legislators when we vote for them.
Yeah, and, Paul, there's already special rules that push back when these scope of practice bills are heard. So it's not like a bill's filed on the first Monday of the session affecting scope of practice and they're running it in public health that next Tuesday. They already have special rules that say, no, we have to let this sit out there a little while, let the public, have input, let the healthcare industry come to us. And as you know, Paul, those meetings where they hear these, they'll have 10, 15, 20 people signing up on both sides. I would argue these are some of the most debated, some of the most informative sessions that they have on any bill. And so as things stand, they're already getting, so much information. So as far as, maybe legislators not being in that profession, I think that's almost a good thing. So they can be like, okay, well, how does this affect my constituent back home? And, Josh Miller has said several times, he's not a doctor, but what he is, he's for freedom and liberty and let people having choices while also maintaining, the public safety within that, but allowing people to have more choices and expanding scope of practice where they can. And,
I did a parody just on the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards. This seems to be very similar, and I know this is on the at conduitnews.com. It's extremely similar. It's almost like a prophecy where you would have an Arkansas board of, that gives the license to the license board to give people licenses. I know it sounds crazy, but that's why it was so funny. That's why I wrote it, because I thought it would be funny. And, you think, well, they're never going to do this. And here they come trying to set up essentially the exact same thing.
Yeah, we'll see where this goes. Again, this was filed as a Senate bill first. Has been adjusted a little bit. I was like, well, is this the same exact thing? And so I pulled up the bills, looking line by line, and they've adjusted a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's still trying to get the same goal established with this new healthcare council, which in effect is going to, be lobbying legislators, and they're going to turn to them and make them basically the experts on whether or not they need to expand the scope of practice bill or not, or licensing, and it goes pretty broad here. So
it really comes down to this. It comes down to this. Do you think that these licensing boards are to the point where they don't make mistakes? Now, I don't think anyone would say that that's true. Okay. So the next question is, do they tend to exist for public safety? Do they tend to exist for protection of their industry and protecting their money? Is it one or the other? Is it a mixture of both? I would say it's a mixture of both, but I would say that it slants to trying to protect the status quo, not for public safety, but for monetary gain or monetary maintenance, maintaining the status quo. I don't think these people then need to be made even more powerful by having some sort of super commission that's going to advise legislators and give them even more organizations to say no to, if you will, and to increase the pressure. And I think that's what this is designed to do. It's obviously an easy bill to oppose. Josh, the other bill is SJR 7. What can you tell us about SJR 7?
So SJR 7 is a proposed constitutional amendment. So I think we had over 40 proposed constitutional amendments that were filed this session from the legislatures, and they could only refer out up to 3. And so this is one of the proposals that may get out. I'm not sure it really will, but what this bill does, Paul, is says, hey, we're going to make this a full-time legislature. In effect, that's what it says. We're going to come every year, no more than 60 days, and have a regular legislative session. So right now, there's a regular legislative session every other year. And then there's a 30-day fiscal session every other year. But this say, hey, we're going to come together, have a regular legislative session every year, in effect making this a full-time legislature. And it also would give the power to the General Assembly to call special sessions. Right now, only the governor can call a special session, but this bill would also allow the General Assembly, the House and the Senate, to call a special session.
Well, that actually would be a great idea, that last part, I feel like. But I don't necessarily know I'm on board. I don't think I'm on board with having these guys up here every year, on what basis is this a bad idea, do you think, Josh?
Well, I think at the very least it provides twice the opportunity to grow government. I think this session is almost a point where people are holding on to their wallets till they sign and die, so they have to hold on to them a lot longer. But inevitably, it would have to increase the per diem and mileage at the minimum, and it would just change the trajectory. I think here in Arkansas to think, well, this is a part-time legislature. People are, have jobs back home, and they come down every other year for the legislative session. It would kind of flip that on its head and come back and say that, we need to meet every year. And I think inevitably it would push more and more people who want to run for office into having to realize, hey, this is more of a full-time position. It would increase costs. And I don't think we need a full-time legislature here in Arkansas. It's not the way the framers intended it. And so I think we leave it where it's at and don't give more opportunity just to grow government if we don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue with that. I really can't. I wish with the sessions the way they were now, we had a cap of the number of bills. I would go further. I wish we could cap the number of the number of bills that could be passed every 2 years, because I just think 2,000 or 1,500, whatever. I think that's way too much. I mean, why so many pieces of legislation? It just seems redundant. But anyway, that's the Week 7 scorecard, Josh. And so I know you're working on Week 8. You're going to be looking at what's filed and coming up. And so we can't wait to have you back on, and we'll go over this again.
All right, sounds good, Paul. Thanks.
All righty, Josh Waters, everybody. He is working hard. He's always. Looking at things that are coming across, looking at things that are being filed. And again, it's pretty simple. It's an economic freedom filter, okay? Does it grow government? All right. Does it increase dependency on government? Or does it spend money we don't have? If it does any of those three things, grow government, increase dependency on government, spend money we don't have, it's easy to vote no. And it's like a defense, right? It's like a shield. And if you can get through the shield of those three things, then, hey, yeah, then we can consider voting for it at that point. The number 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
That's a very interesting question because there is, I think, some debate on whether it will require 51 votes or 75 votes in the House to pass this tax on the increase in. And we have an amendment in our Constitution that says that if you increase a current tax, it requires the 75 votes in the House. So there is some question as to how many votes it actually will take to pass this.
Interesting.
And I don't know if that's been made really clear, but that is definitely something that we need to look at.
I agree. State Representative Julie Mayberry, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming up with creative ideas to not raise our taxes, and I think we need way more of that in Little Rock. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Folks,
okay.
We're going to take a break here, going to reset.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, folks, back this morning, kind of in the home stretch here. Hang on one second. Did I see this right? Hang on. Where did the news go? Where did the news go? That's what you want to hear. That's what you want to hear your talk radio host say, right? So where did the news go? The Senate has okayed. I believe the House okayed this as well, by the way. But I saw the Senate okayed this giant underground fire. It's a big deal. Okay, so they got this fire that's underground. Right, it was an illegal, like an illegal dump site or something, and then they buried it and it caught fire, and it's a big deal. I mean, it's certainly is a public health crisis. The Senate has okayed money to aid the stump dump. That's what it is. Sorry, the stump dump. I see so many headlines at once. This is up in Northwest Arkansas, and the Senate is trying to give them $20 million to try to put out this underground fire. It's a slow-burning fire, and it's in near Bella Vista is where this is taking place. They voted 35-0 to do this. Now, I've heard some people say, why wouldn't this mean it's a private property owner who's did this, and they're the ones that should be responsible, you would think. It's the supplemental appropriation. A supplemental appropriation would allow the Department of Environmental Quality's director to ask the state chief's fiscal officer to lend up to $10 million from the State Budget Stabilization Trust Fund to the department's Hazardous Substance Remedial Action Trust Fund this year in an attempt to try to, figure out what's going on here or try to stop this fire. Now, I was in the press box the other day. I was talking to a fellow a journalist, and he was referencing this town that has been on fire for like 40 or 50 years, or at least a coal vein has been slow burning for a very long time. So this is not uncommon, but this is certainly when you get down to the specifics, is a unique situation for Arkansas, to say the least. It says here on the other side of the Capitol, the House approved amending the Department of Environmental Quality's appropriation for fiscal year 2020. The amendment would include $20 million in additional spending authority for fiscal year 2020. It keeps going here. Loan repayments. Now, this is interesting. Loan repayments shall be made from time to time from any legal fund of the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. And the entire amount of the loan shall be repaid to the Budget Stabilization Trust Fund by June 30th, 2023, according to both pieces of legislation on the House and Senate side. The president pro temp of the Senate, Senator Hendren, told the Joint Budget Committee on Thursday, quote, that the hope here is that if we use some of the trust fund that is over at the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality that is designed to clean up situations like this, that we can get that money repaid eventually from the EPA, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, or from the responsible parties. So this does not make a final determination of who is going to end up paying the bills for this, though it does allow us a mechanism to be put in place so that we can start paying somebody to clean it up and then sort out exactly who is going to pay it after the investigation is done. Okay, so that is, I mean, you got an underground fire. You'd think somebody's got to do something about it. I mean, this is the consensus, right? Everybody says, okay, somebody's going to do something about it. But at least, listen, I mean, some people are asking, why, if there's this underground fire in Bella Vista and this was all done on, private property and it was started, and why wouldn't the private property owner be, held to account here at some point in the future? And I think most reasonable people would say, well, yeah, that's exactly what should happen, But I mean, they've had members of our federal delegation have toured this site, and apparently the fumes are getting pretty bad. From what the reports I've read, I haven't actually been there. I don't know. So that's something that we haven't even covered on this program yet, really, what's going on in Bella Vista with this underground stump fire. So, I mean, the way it's been explained to me is you had this this dump site where you take your stumps and maybe it wasn't necessarily, you weren't supposed to dump them there. That's the way it's been told to me. And, you burn them, start a fire. And then before the fire is totally out, you bury everything, but the fire's not out yet. And so now you just have this slow, smoldering, spreading fire under the ground. Now, I don't even know how that happens. Nature is crazy. But, I mean, I always thought fires need oxygen. That's just what I always thought. I mean, but apparently, some of these, these underground fires, I guess somehow they're getting oxygen. I don't, like I said, it's beyond me. I'm no expert in this. But there seems to be, obviously, there's legislative will to try to solve this problem in some capacity. Let's see, Randy on Facebook. Writing, crony capitalism got to keep the friends funded with their heavy equipment. Not sure what that. Oh, you're talking about. Oh, wow. Now that's some skepticism right there. Bob on Facebook, $20 million to put out a fire sounds like another scam to me. Oh man, Randy, is there a convention of counties? Like that. The convention of states where the states come together to pass amendments. They got Randy writing. Is there a convention of counties where the counties could come together to usurp the states? The answer is no. Matter of fact, if you took Chris Ann Hall's class, you'd know that the state, when it refers to in the Declaration of like the state of Great Britain, that's no coincidence. When it talks about the state of Great Britain, a state like Arkansas or Virginia, if you want to talk about the original 13, they were states because they were on par. They were considered sovereign, just the way Britain is sovereign, just the way Spain or France were sovereign. That's the concept of the United States, right? And the courts have made a terrible decision. The courts have interpreted jurisprudence, maybe one of my least favorite words in the English language. They have interpreted that we surrendered authority. When we delegated authority to the federal government, they think that we surrendered authority. The states surrendered authority. And that's not true. That actually is not the word used. The word is delegated. The word delegated is temporary. Go look up the definition of the word delegated. It is a temporary authority that is given. And that's what we've lost, of course. But so there's no convention of counties. Matter of fact, a lot of these cities that were complaining, you need to let us to be able to set regulations on people's private property. We're the city or whatever. Well, the cities exist because the state of Arkansas allows them to exist. You got to remember that. That's the whole idea. Arkansas is a sovereign entity. We need to recognize that in more than just governing our cities. We need to recognize that in terms of really what the federal government is supposed to be, which is way out of whack. Folks, I'm out of time. Arkansas, thanks for listening. Be safe.